Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Scout Selections here for Friday, March 6th. Before we get into today's play of the day, quick recap of what happened yesterday. We picked up a loss with the Kings -5, which was available on FanDuel at -110. Unfortunately, the line ended up going up to 5.5. We got a good number, but the Kings ended up getting routed by the worst road team in the entire league. Pretty unfortunate, just been on a pretty bad run, as I'm sure a lot of you have noticed. It's unfortunate, but overall, if you've been a follower of this channel for a while, you know that I've been relatively streaky during my tenure, and hopefully we'll be able to turn that around. But for today's card, really not a lot I'm a fan of on the docket. You have some NBA games that I'm not really interested in. You have a lot of college basketball games, but there is one game in particular that I think that there is some value on, and for that reason we'll be giving it out, and it will be on Loyola Chicago and Valparaiso, and we look Loyola Chicago -110, and that line is available on FanDuel. So once again, play that is going to be on Loyola Chicago -5.5, and that line is available on FanDuel at -110. Now, a couple of reasons why we like Loyola Chicago here. First of all, Loyola Chicago has just been the better team all season long. Loyola had the second best record in the entire conference with a 13-5 record in conference play. They're also 21-10. And meanwhile, Valparaiso was pretty mediocre as they ended up going 9-9 in conference play, and they are 17-15 overall. But Evansville was the worst team in the entire conference at 0-18. They didn't win a single conference game, and yet they played Valparaiso yesterday, and Valpo almost lost. Valpo had to come from behind for a little while, ended up winning by 3, and now they're playing for the second straight day. Meanwhile, Loyola Chicago has not played since February 29th, so they haven't played in about a week. And I think Loyola Chicago, with the rest and with the fact that they're just a better overall team, should be able to do enough damage to cover this spread. I find the number pretty fascinating, and I think it's pretty telling. Loyola Chicago opened up at 4.5-point favorites, currently bet up to 5.5. Yet they've played twice this season, and both games were decided by 3 points or less. So even though these games have been very close so far this season, Loyola is now favored by more points than they've covered against Valpo all season long. I think I'm kind of concerned for Valpo here. I think they might get run out. You have to wonder how much fatigue will set in, especially after playing a nail-biting game against one of the worst teams in the entire conference yesterday. Meanwhile, Loyola is very well rested, and I think they should be able to take advantage of this opportunity. Plus, there are a couple other variables at play. Some people might think that players and coaches don't exactly pay attention to the rest of the bracket and what's in store. I don't necessarily believe that. I think after Northern Iowa, the number 1 seed in the entire conference, just lost to Drake, I think Loyola Chicago will have a little bit of extra motivation to move on. First of all, it teaches a good lesson of trying to remain alert of upsets, and second of all, now you're the best team left in the actual conference tournament, which means that you have the best shot moving forward of making it into the NCAA tournament. I think they'll be very motivated. I think they will be able to stay focused. And lastly, I just think it's fascinating that statistically, Loyola is just better in a decent amount of categories. First of all, Loyola, despite the fact that they're averaging 3 fewer points per game, they're shooting roughly 6% better from the floor, which just tells you how much of a pace difference there is in this game. Valpo tends to play at a decent pace, but their efficiency is relatively average, where Loyola Chicago plays at a slow pace, and their efficiency is fantastic. Plus, Loyola is also giving up 8 fewer points per game. Defensively, I think they'll be able to shut down Valpo, and I think that they should be able to win this game. Plus, these higher spreads don't really mean as much in conference tournament, considering the fact that teams are going to be fouling down the stretch as much as possible because this is an elimination game for both teams involved. So even if this game does turn into a 10-point game and you're worried about a backdoor cover, you really shouldn't be because Valpo will keep fouling no matter what. If you also look at the numbers so far this season, Loyola Chicago in road games this season is 7-8, which is really not that bad compared to Valpo, as Valpo is 4-10 on the road this season. I know that this isn't a neutral, but in terms of comparing both teams having to travel to an unfamiliar environment, I definitely trust Loyola Chicago a bit more. I think Loyola will blow this game open in the second half, and for that reason, I think they should win this game by at least 6 points. So the play of the day, once again, is going to be on Loyola Chicago -5.5, and that one is available on FanDuel at -110. Now, looking at the rest of the card, couple of leans. I'll start out with the NBA, though. I find the Brooklyn game fascinating against San Antonio. Marcus Aldridge has been ruled out, and for that reason, I'd have to lean to Brooklyn. They've looked really bad lately, with the exception of the miracle comeback against the Celtics. But I'll have to lean to Brooklyn because Aldridge is probably their best offensive player. or the second best behind DeRozan. And I think you should see the Nets win a relatively close game, so lean to the Nets there. Other than that, looking into the Orlando-Minnesota over. However, for Orlando, Fournier is going to be out, and he is their best offensive shooter, so I'm a bit concerned with how they'll be able to replace his production. I think Vucevic will have a solid game. I think Aaron Gordon will have a solid game. But at the end of the day, I think Fournier being out is a big deal for Orlando offensively, so I'll lean to the Timberwolves on that one. Other than that, it's pretty much it for my thoughts on the NBA card. Really, just not a fan of much. I would lean to Boston, but Jaylen Brown being out, I find a bit concerning because he's one of their best on-ball defenders. So I'm going to pass on the rest of the card. Those are my thoughts on that one. Now, looking at the college basketball card, I'm going to lean to the under in Akron versus Kent State. The first matchup they had totaled 135 points. Total's currently at 145. It's been bet down from 146.5. With the line movement alone, I think there's value on the under. Lean to the under on that one. Other than that, what else do I like here? I'm going to lean to the under 130.5 between Loyola Marymount and San Francisco. They played twice this season. Both games very close. Both games pretty low scoring. I think that this game should follow the same suit. I think you should see both teams struggle a bit offensively. San Francisco has a very solid offense, but they run a lot of motion, and it takes a lot of time off the clock. Where Loyola Marymount's offense is just an absolute disaster. They also had to play yesterday as they ended up destroying San Diego, and I just think that they're going to run out of gas in the second half. San Francisco will eat up most of the clock with their motion offense. So for me, I'll lean to the under on that one. Other than that, I'm going to lean to Wyoming plus the 16 against Utah State. I know Utah State rallied from behind. They ended up beating New Mexico yesterday. Wyoming is on a run of dreams. They were awful during the entire season. I believe they were the 11th seed in the conference. They're the worst team in the conference. And yet they still managed to beat Colorado State in an upset and Nevada in an upset in the last 2 days. Will fatigue play a factor? Maybe. But at the end of the day, Utah State has been okay this season. They've underachieved compared to what I thought they would be in the beginning of the season. At the end of the day, I just think 16 points is too high. I think Wyoming will keep this tough. They play at a very slow pace. I think they'll try to limit Utah State in transition. And I think that this game should be pretty close. Do I think Wyoming's going to win? No. But do I think that they'll lose by 17 plus? No. I think Wyoming will keep this game to within 10 to 15. So for me, I'll lean to Wyoming plus the points on that one. Other than that, I'm going to lean to Northern Iowa minus the 1.5 against Ball State. Northern Illinois. Sorry about that. Northern Illinois against Ball State. Northern Illinois has been the better team so far this season. They're currently in first place in their division in the MAC. They're currently laying 1.5. They also lost to Ball State on the road earlier this season. Very close game, so there's a revenge angle there. But Northern Illinois is just the better overall team. They have the best player on the court. I just think that they're going to be able to take care of business. Lean to Northern Illinois in that one. But the play that I once again is going to be on Loyola Chicago minus 5.5. And that one is available on FanDuel at minus 110. That's good for the installment of Scott's Selections here for Friday, March 6th. And good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.